The Edmonton Oilers are set for their Stanley Cup final rematch with the Florida Panthers. What will it take to make this year's outcome different? Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers is here to talk about that and more next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Oilers, Nick Zararis. And Nick, are you ready for the rematch?
I've been very juiced up. I can't lie. The last 3 days, a lot of sitting on it. I did an extra episode on Saturday because I just had so many thoughts. You know, you don't get chances like this all that often.
Yeah, no question. And you got to savor them when they happen. And you got to take advantage of them. Also, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, they came up one goal short a year ago. Would you say all season that this team has been on a mission to overturn that one goal deficit?
I think it's really interesting because you contrast how well they've played in the playoffs, where other than Florida, you can make a strong argument they've been the best team in the playoffs, polishing off Vegas and Dallas in 5 games apiece, 6 against LA. Very clinical and efficient. Great performances in the Vegas and LA series in particular. And you contrast that with the regular season that was very up and down. Finished 3rd in the Pacific Division. Kind of shut it down the backstretch of March and April, where a lot of guys with nagging injuries, McDavid, Draisaitl, Wallman, Nugent Hopkins, all missed games at various points. Matthias Ekholm was dinged up basically the entirety back half of the regular season. Tried to play through injury at 4 Nations, didn't go particularly well, dealt with a nagging injury, came back, played a period of a game, got hurt, and returned to the lineup in the Dallas series, but very different tonally. And you look at the goal splits from McDavid, Draisaitl versus everyone else, that's dramatically different in relation to what it was in the regular season, where pretty much everybody other than McDavid and Draisaitl underperformed their career averages. So really, I don't want to say they were pulling punches, but I definitely feels like they had an idea that once we make the playoffs, there's another gear to get to. And I think you could say the same for Florida. You know, they sat Tkachuk the entire back half of the regular season, didn't rush him back from injury. We're like 10-5 down the final 25 games of the regular season because they kind of know what they need to do at this point.
We know Zach Heyman is unavailable for this series. How do they compensate for his loss?
So it's going to be the money ball. It's going to be aggregate. They are not, you can't replace Zach Heyman, 50-goal guy. Last year, 70 goals, regular season and playoffs combined. You're not replacing that. He had 11 points in the 15 playoff games he did play prior to breaking his wrist. They're going to make do. Power play, they can get away with Corey Perry as the net front guy. That'll take care of it. At 5-on-5, it depends on how aggressive Chris Knoblauch wants to be in the forward deployment. If they run McDavid, Draisaitl together, I imagine it'll be Corey Perry with them to try and even out the rest of the lineup. But I could see Connor Brown playing there when he comes back. He missed the last 2 games against Dallas coming off of the concussion, but he's expected to be back for this series. I expect him to get a look there. I could see Evander Kane getting some looks there. It also depends if they want to play Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at center versus wing, whether he's on McDavid's wing or down the lineup as an extra center. I know there's been a lot of conjecture. How are the Oilers going to take advantage of home ice? Are you going to put 2 centers in Henrique and Nuge and Hopkins on the same line to try and take Barkov or Tkachuk, whichever Florida line you want to take out of the equation? So there's a lot you don't know until the games start as far as how they're going to try and solve some of these questions.
The Florida Panthers are one of the most physical teams in the National Hockey League. What approach do you think the Oilers should take to respond to or to ignore maybe that physicality?
So the Oilers and kind of, I don't want to say subconsciously, but it feels like a lot of the decisions they've made in the last 12 months were very specifically tailored around how do we prepare for an eventual series against a Florida, a Tampa Bay, a Vegas, those teams that, as you alluded to, a little more heavy of a style, a little more prone to playing off the forecheck and off the cycle. And the biggest thing they've done is they've implemented two better puck movers. You think about the defense last year where you had Cody Ceci in there, you had Nurse playing really dinged up, not playing effective hockey, Vincent Desharnais at points, you had Philip Broberg playing in his first serious playoffs on his offside, and you replace that with John Klingberg, who seems to have found the fountain of youth out of nowhere. He played 10 games in the regular season and looked like a guy who hadn't played hockey in a year and a half, and since coming back into the lineup in the playoffs, him and Jake Wallman have formed one of the best depth pairs in the entire NHL. So as far as mitigating what makes Florida effective, it's quick transition play. And the Oilers did a really good job of that against Dallas and against Vegas, where it's fine if you want to circle the perimeter of the offensive zone, take shots from wherever. But the Oilers get possession. You have Wallman, you have Klingberg, Bouchard, you have Ekholm coming off of the injury who looked okay in game number 5. You have Nurse who's having a nice playoffs. Pretty much all 6 of their guys are pretty good at moving the puck in a way that last year you really only felt good about 2 or 3 of them.
Talk to me about Corey Perry, 40 years old, great story, looking for that elusive next cup, possibly to wrap up his career. Talk to me about what this means for him and what he's meant for the Oilers.
It's very weird to say he's been a catalyst for a guy who plays 12 minutes a game, but the lineup, and frankly, the Oilers' fortunes turned in the playoffs when they started playing him with McDavid and Draisaitl at 5-on-5. And it's really weird to watch a guy at his age who the skating was never his strong suit, but even now you can see he looks significantly slower than everyone else. But the thing that makes him interesting and compelling is his short area game. We talk about it the same way you would in golf, the short area game. If the puck's within 5 to 10 feet of him, he's almost always going to win it because he's going to leverage his body, get lower than the other guy. He's going to stick lift somebody, which the good old perfectly timed stick lift, one of the most satisfying plays in hockey, and Perry, even at his age, is still really good at it. And the obvious secret, you play a guy with McDavid and Draisaitl or just McDavid, they're going to occupy a lot of attention. And Perry, a lot of the goals he scored in these playoffs have been him hanging around, leaking down low, getting behind the defense while the defense is preoccupied with McDavid circumnavigating the offensive zone or Draisaitl drifting to the right circle to look for the one-timer. And as far as what it means, like you said, kind of a bookend, someone who's triple crown, gold in an Olympics, a World Cup and World Junior, a cup, a Hart Trophy, 50-goal guy, someone who's been one of the probably better superstars of his era, who's found a way to hang around as a depth, the supporting piece over the last handful of years. And you have a real unique combination there in Perry, who's played more playoff games than some NHL franchises, playing with Jeff Skinner, who's played 2 career playoff games.
Yeah, no doubt. Connor McDavid, second year in a row in the final. How important for his legacy is winning that cup?
I think the thing that's really interesting to me about the McDavid, and I was talking about it with someone because there was a clip floating back around from after Game 7 last year where Draisaitl was talking about it, and he said, "You guys think you understand how much he wants this," and Draisaitl says, "There's nobody in the sport who wants this more than he does. He's going to get another chance at this, and we'll see what happens then." But you think about it in the context of Connor McDavid was writing Sidney Crosby letters as a 5-year-old, asking then 15-year-old Sidney Crosby, how do you handle pressure? How do you make sure you're ready? How do you be responsible to your teammates? This is your life's work. Connor McDavid's 28 years old. He spent 23 years of his life trying to get back to this moment. And you saw the very candid reaction when they lost in the Amazon documentary, how upset he was. And a lot of guys don't get this second chance. Lundqvist only went once. Joe Thornton only went once. You only get so many kicks at this can. And as far as legacy, I don't think winning a Stanley Cup versus not is going to do a whole lot as far as where he is in the pantheon. I think the counting stats for era adjusted will sort themselves out for the most part. But more than anything, I think it helps the narrative. I think you need that championship in a team sport to really just say he's here, because Sid won his first cup 3 years in. Ovi, it took like 10 years. Stamkos, it took like 10 years. That's not to say you can't. Like, McDavid's very much still in his prime. He's only 28 years old. There's plenty of time here, but you only get so many kicks at this can.
All right, going to be interesting. Going to be a great series. I'm looking forward to it. Nick, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Locked On Oilers is available on all the major podcasting platforms and over on YouTube, on Twitter and Instagram. It's just Nick Zararis, Nick, Zararis. And then on TikTok, it's Nick Zararis Sports.
All right. Thanks so much, Nick.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And hockey fans, you can check out all the latest odds for the Stanley Cup Finals, which get underway later this week. If you're new to FanDuel, this is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Again, that's FanDuel.com. Place that first $5 bet, and if it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.